And now we've made it to our last summer unit, the SSR from the third banner, Larva Tiamat Summer. Now, Tiamat Summer is not at all what I envisioned she would be. I think this maybe comes a little bit out of left field because it's not what a lot of people were expecting. But Tiamat Summer is actually very interesting in the fact that she has been something that the game has been missing for a bit now. And it's been something that I've been harping on for years and been saying to a great degree that the quick system needed. And numerous times I've been told that I was wrong on this particular subject. I've been told that the quick system did not need more of a sustained support. The quick system did not need, a 30% charger and stuff like that. Well, to a degree, there were merits to those disagreements, that the quick system is not bereft of options. It's not like it's incapable of functioning at a high level. But it naturally felt like it was hamstrung by a lot of things. And Larva Tiamat is bringing a lot of that in her kit, though it's not everything. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how I think Larva Tiamat can be really good for you guys, where I think she'll be kind of the most effective, and whether or not you guys actually need to roll her. Now, I'm going to go over this in the same way that I go over every other unit, but naturally, because Larva Tiamat is going to be a support-based unit, we're not going to have NP damage calculations. I'm not going to have refund numbers for you, though I do have a little bit of a miniature crit comparison to talk about with you guys. So, how is it that Larva Tiamat stacks up? How does she work in this insane environment that Quick kind of is now? Well, let's start out by going over her kit. So to begin with, Larva Tiamat has about 12k attack herself. This is not bad, but as an archer, this is definitely going to be a little bit of a concern at times. That, as we have already kind of mentioned, Larva Tiamat is a crit support in a lot of ways, and this is going to be intriguing because the class choice here can impact that for a couple of reasons, and I'll talk about why here. But 12k attack is going to be nice. It's going to give her a lot of firepower, even if steroids weren't online, which, frankly speaking, you'll want to keep them online as long as possible. HP wise, she's not exactly the most robust 5-star. But I don't think you're going to have to worry about that. She actually does have quite a bit in her kit to help her stay alive, so I wouldn't be super concerned about that sort of thing. Star absorption wise, she's at 156. This is actually a lot higher than your average archer, but this is also going to be maybe a little bit of a problem depending on how you're running Larva Tiamat. In a lot of ways, you're going to want to run Summer Tiamat here with another Tiamat, and I'll explain that in a bit as to why, but understand that star absorption, if you're running a single Tiamat, might come up as an issue. Star generation's only 8%. It is what it is. NP charge attack is 0.59. It's actually not terrible, but it's not screamingly good. It's just, it is what it is. And NP charge defense is 3%. Death rate's at 27%, ever so slightly higher than average. She is chaotic summer alignment. She is female gendered, and her traits, well, there's a laundry list of them. She's animal characteristic, demonic beast servant, divinity, dragon, enema elish nullification, goddess servant, humanoid, immune to pigify, non-hominid servant, obstacle maker, servant, 7 night servant, summer mode servant, super large, and in stage 3, she is also levitating. So there's a whole lot there, a whole lot to exploit, a whole lot to synergize with actually as well, and that's another thing to pay attention to depending on who you want to use alongside Larva Tiamat. Take a look at her deck. She actually has a single buster, double arts, double quick deck, and interestingly enough, she breaks the mold that we had with some of the other summer units where their quick and arts cards were all above average. In Tiamat's case, her quick cards are quite a bit above average at 5 hits. Her arts cards are at average at 3 hits. Her buster cards are above average at 4 hits. And her extra attack is average at 5 hits. So it is interesting to denote, but this will be an interesting synergy with herself. Her deck is actually very beneficial to her own buffing pattern. This is notable because it's not falling in line with maybe some of the other quick buffers that we've had over time, where it's a little bit more quick and buster centric. And this does shift the capabilities of quick into a little bit of a new era due to this, because we're moving, maybe at least with this change, a little bit away from Summer Scotty. But keep in mind, units like Summer Scotty and Original Scotty still going to be really useful at times. So I do like this nonetheless. Taking a look at her active skills now, this is where things are going to actually get interesting for her. She increases the party's quick and arts performance for 3 turns by 20%. She will increase the party's buff removal resistance for 1 time 3 turns, up to 100%. And she will overcharge the party's NP by 2 stages for 1 time 3 turns. Keep that in the back of your mind, the overcharge. We're going to come back to that here in a bit. But this is all on a 7-turn cooldown. So this is going to be a little bit of the demerit of using Summer Tiamat. Cooldown and getting back to it again means that if you end up outside of a 3-turn with her, you're going to be waiting a bit to try to get back to some of this stuff. Her second skill here charges her own NP gauge by 50%. And it will charge the rest of the party, not including her, by up to 30% as well. So this makes Summer Tiamat a hybrid charger. This is something that, you know, people have been proposing Scotty buffs for a while, and this is actually one of the changes that I proposed making to Scotty, is that they allowed her to maybe have the greater capacity to get to her own NP while still buffing the party, or maybe spreading her charge around to the party, allowing for a little bit more malleability in the summer system. Sorry, in the quick system. So this is a really nice thing for her, and this does mean that if you pair her alongside a second Summer Tiamat and add in a mana loading append, both those Tiamats can get to their noble phantasm on turn 1. And that's going to be super valuable if you're trying to farm without starting charge, without, you know, specific craft essences, things like that. This will actually really help out. From here, it's also going to increase the party's attack for 3 turns by 20%. And from there, it's going to recover the party's HP by up to 2,000. So good things about the skill. Again, spread party charge and another steroid, as well as some healing. Bad things about the skill. It's another 7-turn cooldown. And the HP that's getting healed is not max HP. So this is likely going to happen for a lot of people turn 1, where it will not be effective in terms of healing. So it is what it is, but she does actually have some healing in her kit. That is not going to be where her survival comes from, thankfully. And I'm going to say, if people are looking at Tiamat as a sustained support, she kind of can, but keep in mind, she does not fulfill the healing requirement. This is not enough. This will not keep your party alive down the stretch. Looking at the third skill here, this is going to be another interesting one, because this skill works like Himiko's does. If you guys have ever used her, she puts a critical star regeneration buff on each of her allies. Same thing here. It's 8 critical stars per turn per ally for 3 turns. So what does that mean? That means 24 stars per turn for 3 turns if you're using a full team call. This also means in a double Summer Scotty situation, you're looking at 48 stars per turn automated. This is why I said, if we go back to that stance on the star absorption rate, her having a higher star absorption means she might steal stars from whoever your devoted damage dealer is. That could be a problem if you're running 1 Tiamat. If you're running 2, you're at 48 stars, you're not going to care. You're literally just going to be sitting there and you're going to be like, oh man, I can generate 2 stars by doing literally nothing. So everybody has 100% crit chance. That's ideal. And so that's where, if you've seen already some Summer Tiamat stuff, you'll notice a lot of people are running a double Summer Tiamat comp, partially for this reason, partially for others. From here, it's going to increase the party's critical damage for 3 turns by up to 50%. Again, double Summer Tiamat, that's now 100%. So you have a lot of value there too. It will also charge the party's NP gauge every turn for 3 turns by 10%. This is kind of an overlooked aspect of her. So what do we have here? Well, we have the makings of Merlin without the healing. We have critical stars per turn and charge per turn. The downside is it's only the 3 turns, so this will wear off once you get outside of the 3-turn cadence. But the good news is this will help other units get to their NP. It may not be the sole reason they get to their NP, but in addition with carding and maybe other charge sources, yes, this can absolutely allow a unit to get back to an NP easier. And it's something that I think is really good for Quick to have, because Quick does struggle at certain times if it doesn't get the right cards for this. Quick's NP generation, especially with Mighty Chains, very good. But this is going to be the downfall. Both the strength and the downfall of Tiamat is going to rely on card RNG. If you get the right cards at the right time, you're golden. If you get the wrong cards, this could hurt. So having automated charge on top of her already existing 80% charge, basically, that she has if you're running her in a double comp, that's really nice. And I think that's going to allow her to get to an NP again. Maybe it's going to allow your, third unit to get to an NP. I like that skill. And this one is at least only on a 6-turn cooldown. Looking at passive skills here, you guys can see she gets magic resistance A for debuff resistance, independent action A for 10% more critical damage, goddess essence EX for flat damage added, and debuff resistance by an additional 30%, making her already 50% debuff resistant base combined with the buff removal resistance, and you're looking pretty good there at that point. She also has self-modification Summer, which is just a nice little 300 damage cut, as well as a critical attack chance resistance by 10%. So just, again, kind of making her tankier and harder to bring down there. Take a look at her Append skills here. I highly recommend the mana loading. Max this out, lure it, get it as fast as you can. If you only roll the 1 copy of her, make sure you get her to Bond 6 as quickly as possible for this. And that will allow you to, from 0% starting charge with a double Tiamat comp, get yourself to full and do some really, really good stuff. The 5th Append also has a lot of value. Why do I say this? Well, because this one is going to allow you to get back to things faster if you don't get the good card RNG, if things fall apart and you maybe end up in a bad scenario. I like this. This will allow cooldowns to be lessened. 4th Append is interesting. And the reason why is because we're going to start talking about things like the crit cap here. You'll see why in a minute. 3rd Append is anti-alter ego attack damage aptitude. Not the worst as an archer, since she is a, knight class, but not the best either. I'm going to say this one is the odd man out and you really don't need it. Extra attack finesse. This could be really good for her, both for star gen and in P gen, on top of extra damage that the extra attack would give. And next up, we get to her Noble Phantasm. This is a quick support Noble Phantasm. What does it do? Well, it grants the party invincibility for 1 turn. So this is a notable departure from original Scotty, who has a 1 times dodge. This is a hard 1 turn. And the nice advantage of this is that this is tied to a Noble Phantasm instead of a skill. You will probably get back to a Noble Phantasm faster than you will get back to a skill. Unless we're talking, Buster Comp shenanigans with Coin Sky and stuff. So that is really, really nice. This means that as fast as you can get back to a Noble Phantasm, you can just keep doing this. And you can just keep making yourself invulnerable. And that could make her actually pretty interesting in some solo environment scenarios. And that can also make her really nice in terms of, again, protecting the party and giving you maybe that sustain. So remember now, she has hard survivability, stars per turn, charge per turn. The only thing she's actually really lacking is true sustain, aka healing per turn. But this is a very, very nice effect. From here, it's going to increase the party's debuff resistance for 3 turns. By how much? Well, this scales with NP level, as do the next couple effects. Base 50%. The interesting part about this is, in combination with her passives, this gives her 100% just at NP1. So don't say, hey, I need the extra debuff resistance off of her stuff just for, you know, the NP levels. It's not really worth. I wouldn't do it for that, Reese. So that is really, really nice and going to make it very difficult for anybody to ever land a debuff against Tiamat. From here, it's going to increase the party's quick performance for 3 turns, probably what a lot of you guys expected, by 50%. And also party's arts performance by 3 turns by 50%. Summer Scotty is to quick and buster what Summer Tiamat kind of is to quick and arts. So we now have a little bit of a departure. We're not having quick be so shackled to buster. This is actually nice. This opens up quite a bit of options for the quick system, and it's one of the things that I really like. But we'll talk about this a little bit more in a bit. But needless to say, yes, this is really, really good. And again, even just at NP1, you're looking at 30%. The thing I don't like about this, well, it scales, and 50% is one hell of a drug at NP5. So basically, you were saying, hey, with the 30% coming off the back of the NP plus the 20% from the first skill, that is 50% at base value. But if you wail, if you go further, this unit becomes a 70% buffer instead. That is kind of strong and kind of ridiculous, frankly. A little bit, this is creeping into the territory that we maybe see in other games where the additional copies of a unit actually does change gameplay. I'm not going to say that that's really what's going on here yet, but it is pretty darn close. We're getting quite a bit of not just damage now. You're also getting things like star generation and NP generation off of the back of this. And that can definitely mean that extra copies of her do go a long way and do make you really, really strong. Looking at the overcharge effect. Now things get actually spicy. Her overcharge increases the party's critical damage for 3 turns by a base of 50%. And if you denote back what we said on the first skill, it's 2 stages, 1 time for the overcharge, which means the very first NP that Tiamat rips off for herself will be 100% party critical damage for 3 turns. Unless you're using her in a double summer Tiamat comp. Because that means that you're not just going to have the overcharge from her, you're going to have the overcharge from another Tiamat, which means 4 stages, aka 500%. And if you do a double Summer Tiamat NP on turn 1, congratulations. In a double Summer Tiamat comp, you have a base value of 400% crit damage, not including things like traits, not including things like, skills on the 3rd unit, stuff like that. So that is kind of absurd. Why is that absurd? The game has a crit cap of 500%. Here's what you guys need to know about this. 1, there are things that count towards this cap, and there are things that aren't. I'm actually going to do a little bit of research here because I honest to God, off the top of my head, I actually don't know if the 4th append contributes towards this cap. If it does, that's kind of oof. If it doesn't, hey, more is more. The interesting part about this is this means that depending on the unit that you choose to run alongside them, you might very well hit this cap because just 2 Summer Tiamats are going to do this for you. Basically, if you start looking at certain units have more than 100% crit damage in their kit. That crit damage might not add up. Or rather, I should say, it might go over cap and be wasted. I don't think you're really going to have to worry about that because you're going to be doing such ridiculous damage numbers at 400 to 500% crit damage that it's really just a non-issue. And this is a lot of where her real value will lies in this crit damage. But keep in mind, adding additional crit damage will actually, to some degree, not be as good as just at that point adding pure raw steroids. Things like attack up, things like quick up or arts up. That might go a little bit further than just adding in more point for point crit damage at that point. But oh boy, this has a lot of impact. And there are at least 2 currently known exceptions to the crit cap, and they are both very recent. So what do I mean? Well, when we start talking about some units that would pair with her, you might be rattling off in your mind someone like Van Gogh, someone like Bazette, somebody like Khadroth, somebody like Doman, these sorts of things. Well, naturally, there are some good synergies there. And yes, if you have units that are, you know, like say in Doman's case, he's a chaotic evil buffer. Well, Tiamat herself is not evil, but she is chaotic. So you can get even more out of something like that. But I think what I am going to say here is that be careful with units that have more, like significantly more. So like, for instance, Van Gogh herself can get at least 200% crit damage on her own. A lot of that would kind of be wasted, but you might actually notice that you would have a little bit of an issue using a Van Gogh alongside the Summer Tiamats. If for only the reason of a lot of the issues with Summer Tiamat are resolved when the damage dealer can just kind of wipe out the first wave. If you have to spend that first turn instead doing that, you're not necessarily going to make it through the node in the 3 turns. So getting the first wave down will be a really, really nice thing. And that may be a single enemy, or that may be an AoE pack. And that's going to determine a lot of maybe who you want to use alongside Summer Tiamat to actually pop off. Now, I just said there were 2 known exceptions. The 2 known exceptions currently are Lilith, who actually has a critical damage resist down for 3 turns, and Summer Miss Crane, who's also on the same banner, who has the similar effect on her Noble Phantasm. Why are these different? These specifically are their own unique debuff. It has its own separate cap of 100%. It stacks with the 500% cap of crit damage, and it is separate. So you can actually technically go over cap with these 2 units. Everybody else, either the function doesn't function how you think, or it is also contributing towards the cap. So like in the case of Khadroth has the effect that looks pretty similar to these. But what hers does is when you crit, it actually applies card type down to the enemy. So it's not stacking crit damage. It's just giving basically another steroid. And so that actually works. Khadroth will work quite well with Summer Tiamat in that sense. So there are some things in terms of, hey, just pay attention to what you're doing. Because again, it's not like we're talking about like a whale comp here. We're talking about you're just going to build both Summer Tiamats to their NP, fire them off right off the rip. That's going to be 400% base crit damage. And for Tiamat herself, you have other things, as we already mentioned, like independent action that's going to boost the crit and stuff like that. So it is kind of interesting to denote that realistically, I think it's going to be pretty easy actually for a lot of combinations with Tiamat to hit the actual crit cap in game. But that's why I wanted to tell you guys about Lilith and Crane in particular, because there may be other units in the future that have a similar effect that also allows them to bypass that exact cap, not crap. So let's talk about now crit numbers, just for comparative sake. And it's kind of difficult to model like carding damage at times, but here you guys go. I asked Avalon and Bob to kind of work on this and come up with at least just a simple demonstration to help you guys understand. So on screen, you guys can now see a little bit of a spreadsheet. I'll put the link in the comments of the video. You guys can see that she actually has right here 2 compositions up top. This is Summer Tiamat. On the right side over here, we have a singular Summer Tiamat with any 2 other units being part of the rest of the team. And this is kind of the amount of damage a chain would get you in terms of carding. On the left side, we have a 2 times Summer Tiamat comp with any 3rd unit. Instead of 2 different units, now we just have 1 slot available. Well, at that point, you start seeing almost a tripling of damage. This is why you're going to see so many people run double Summer Tiamat. It works really well. This is similar in a weird way to like the double Doman comp. On its own, it is strong, but it's maybe not as strong as other compositions. But when you double it up and you get that force multiplier effect going on, it starts producing pretty crazy output. And that's what we're seeing here. Now, just for comparative sake, this is against, like, say, Super Orion down here as just sort of a control. Super Orion base value, he's going to crit a little bit harder. That's just kind of what his whole deal is. But this is looking only at his triple buster chain. And some of you guys may be wondering, okay, well, why did you do the BQA chain for Mighty Chain down there with Summer Tiamat instead of maybe like QAB or something like that? And the answer is, due to all of the buffs in the Summer Tiamat comp, you're basically looking at BQA being the strongest Mighty Chain comp for that actual composition. That is an interesting thing to denote, that this would normally be one of your least damaging Mighty Chains, but just simply due to the amount of buffs flying around, this actually ends up being your strongest option. And so that is something to understand about this. It's going to be good for both star generation and NP generation and damage. It's almost inverting the scales of damage at that point to make everything kind of viable there. So it is another interesting denotation there. And you can see down at the bottom, instead, you have QAB being kind of the better one for Super Ryan there. And where Super Ryan's getting a lot of his damage output, it's in that Buster chain. It's in those Buster cards. It's just that. So Super Ryan can output similar, if not better numbers, but that's going to rely, again, on card RNG, and that's going to rely on Super Ryan particularly getting those Buster cards to actually pop off. The difference between that and, say, Summer Tiamat is going to be that Summer Tiamat herself has 4 cards. The other Summer Tiamat has 4 cards. So your 3rd unit here in the middle, basically, depending on the amount of quick and arts cards they have, and to a lesser degree, still Buster will do fine. There is card RNG here, but you could probably still card your way through waves. The reason I'm saying card RNG so much is because naturally, you might think, well, I can just crit through a wave. And that's absolutely possible. We saw demonstrations like this back when Van Gogh first came out. And to a little bit of a degree, Tiamat is very similar to Van Gogh. Tiamat's just more of a party-oriented Van Gogh, whereas Van Gogh is a little bit more of a, like, solo debuffer and specialist, though you can definitely pair people alongside Van Gogh and still have a good time. Tiamat herself is going to be a little bit more share the wealth oriented, and you can see it because a lot of how she functions is going to come off the back of those crits, but also those party-wide buffs. And I think as we start to look at this, as we start to look back at these crit comparisons, you guys will denote that, again, she is just capable of making everybody do some pretty insane damage. So hard RNG is going to become a problem when you start looking at going up against this AoE wave and you start having, oh man, like I can do this, I can just crit through, and then you get like 5 of a kind. And then you go, crap. That's why card RNG will still be a little bit of a problem. There will be some issue there with the potential of how you're maybe going to work through. And so I've actually come up with this list for you guys. Tiamat is going to have 5 weaknesses that you guys need to know about. Everything else, she'll probably just be stellar, fantastic, and absolutely abusable. What are the 5 weaknesses that we need to talk about? So, first off, right off the rip, just analytically speaking, this heal sucks. This heal is piss poor. It does not qualify really for the sustained value unless you can manage to just keep cycling Tiamat NPs to the point like the enemy can't touch you. You are just staggering perfectly your invulns and the enemy's not able to like really find any purchase. So much that over the course of like 7 or 6 turns, you're managing to get back and heal yourself with this. So I'm going to say, yeah, as far as sustain's concerned, she has like 3 of the 4 parts to be functionally quick Merlin, but she lacks kind of the biggest one, which is actually keeping the party topped off down the stretch. That is a super important one if you want to be a true sustain support. So she does have sustain, just maybe not all of it, maybe not everything that she needs. That's interesting to note because it may mean that in the future, we see a more quick-oriented healer come out down the line. Who knows? Maybe that's like an Abe no Seimei or some other type of character. But it wouldn't surprise me to see Quick get yet another support that works in this environment and makes comp like this functionally a quick version of the Invincible comp and maybe a like alternative to it. So from there, I'm also going to say that her second one is that she is kind of an archer, and that may hinder her at points. Obviously, the value in Tiamat is that she is buffing the entire party. So everybody is critting, everybody's got the 400% crit damage. Wherein is the problem? Well, what if you're going up against Lancers and they're high health and like a 90++ node? That's going to make Tiamat comps relatively unviable. I'm not going to say you can't do it, but it would get really rough, and it would be even more card RNG than normal, because logically then you'd be looking at a scenario where Tiamat's own cards maybe don't help out and you're not wanting to get them. There may be ways around that, things you could do to shuffle the deck and stuff, but this would be a natural weakness that she would have. So the fact that they chose her to be a archer instead of maybe a class that would be a lot more neutral in more variety of situations, it is what it is, but that is just, again, something to denote. Another weakness, I don't think this one is a full weakness, but it's kind of 50-50. It's the fact that her Noble Phantasm is a quick card. A lot of supports traditionally in the past have had Arts Noble Phantasms, and there's a big reason for why and where it can help. Having an Arts Noble Phantasm means that you have the capability of combining that Noble Phantasm maybe with another Arts Noble Phantasm or another card or 2 cards or whatever that are also arts, and get a free, quick, easy triple arts chain to help you get back to another NP sequence. Now, with regards to it being a quick card, the upside is that this allows easier Mighty Chain formation with things like a Buster card and an Arts card, which are usually traditionally strong. In this sense, it's kind of weird. In a low-key way, if they weren't going to make it Arts to make the triple Arts chain, one of the best things they actually could have done here, ironically enough, would have been to make her NP Buster. And you could lead with it into a Mighty Chain that has been buffed to have Quick and Arts up. That would have actually been better potentially for that potential use. So now instead it's going to take up, if you're trying to Mighty Chain on the back end of it, the quick slot of that, which is one of the card types that she would have buffed. So you're going to have to make a choice of, do you Mighty Chain or not? And maybe do you hold off on the Noble Phantasm or not? That is going to be an interesting thing, but this will create some clunkiness when you go to try to card with her, especially as you get outside of a 3-turn cadence. But I think that'd be the ideal, is don't get outside of the 3-turn cadence. So again, it's good for Mighty Chains. It's bad for the possibility of generating triple arts. It just basically means that triple arts will probably not happen unless you just get very, very lucky in this composition. Her fourth weakness is going to be that she requires a noble phantasm to get the vast majority of her buffs. I saw people in chat already commenting on this when I first started recording here. But yes, due to the fact that a lot of this actual like steroid and crit damage up is coming off of her NP, this means you have to get to her NP in order to get the buff. The good news is it's not skill locked. The bad news is you got to get 100% charge. So again, getting to the first one, not going to be hard. Getting to a second one, that could be a little bit spicy. It just also means, again, that you may just have to take like starting charge on her until you can get the mana loading unlocked if you don't roll multiple copies. It is what it is. So again, that is just going to be something that I think could be a little bit problematic. And this also means that in a sustained scenario, you must wait out the skill charge cooldown timers or use her cards to get back to full, which may be fine. It also might be unideal at points. So watch out for that type of scenario where you go like, oh man, I didn't want to have to use Summer Tiamat's cards here. I wanted to go with the devoted damage dealer, but I ended up, having to do it, or basically because I need another noble phantasm to get off, or maybe I just realized I'm outside the cadence and just go like, oh crap, like I've got to get somebody back to their NP or to their protect party or whatnot. And last but certainly the most is card RNG. Just card RNG in general is going to be a little bit of an issue. Like we mentioned, getting 5 of a kind, like getting all of one unit's deck in here is going to be a problem. And this is actually kind of funny too, because a lot of the times if you get 5 of a kind, you have a much higher chance of getting 5 of a kind 3 turns in a row. It has been known to happen, but usually that's one of the precursors in order to do that naturally, is that you would have to have it. But yes, if you get 5 of a kind, you're not up against a single enemy. That is really oof. That is going to be meaning that your buffs are probably going to fall off before you get to the final wave. It's meaning that you're going to have to spend more than one turn on whatever wave you're on, unless you can manage to break things up. Like maybe like in a 2 enemy wave, you might be able to manage it if you broke it up with a noble phantasm or something. But yeah, this would just be a natural issue nonetheless. So in that regard, I think this is something to watch out for, but I do think Summer Tiamat is a very good unit. So let's talk about the idea of, do you have to have her? Do you think that she is a meta unit? Is she gonna be someone that you guys need? Well, honest to God, for farming purposes, I think a lot of people probably will not want to go through the general pace of it. I did see somebody try to equate the fact that because she's a carding centric unit, this is actually faster than traditional noble phantasm farming. That is not true. And I'll tell you guys why. And that's, again, kind of what I mentioned before. So if you think about the practical uses and the practicality of working her through a node, a lot of the times you're going to want to get both those Summer Tiamat noble phantasms off right at the beginning. Then from there, you will want probably a offensive noble phantasm to clear wave 1. The reason why is because you're only going to have 1 card left. So if it's not a single enemy first wave, you're going to get kind of restricted as to what you can use as the third unit. It's definitely possible, but that is going to be one of the weird limitations. You could argue that's a weakness, but I felt like saying node structure's a weakness is a little bit of a reach, because she will have the capability. It's just going to restrict what the choices are and the options that you could run alongside of her. Pay attention to what node structure is, and that will help you choose your unit to run alongside a double Tiamat comp. You can run her as a single sort of option, but keep in mind, you're having those buffs. You're not getting as much automated star gen, and that may affect critting viability. That may affect other things. So it really just depends on who you're trying to run with. I think where she'll be strongest is in that double setup. But as we start looking towards that, as we start looking towards, hey, what are our options restricted to in a double Tiamat comp? That's where I think, like, yes, there are multiple viable options, but it is something that you guys are just really going to have to pay attention to. So I think, yes, as a whole, like, she's good, but due to the nature of how you're going to have to use her, that means a lot of times you will still be doing 3 noble phantasms. So bringing this back full circle, is it faster to use a Summer Tiamat comp as opposed to a normal traditional farming comp? No, I actually don't think it is. I think it's at best the same speed, if not slower, because instead of just doing 3 Noble Phantasms and being done, you now have to do 3 Noble Phantasms and then still card all the additional waves. So I think it just adds up over time, and it basically ends up making it take at best the same amount of time, if not faster. There's also the card RNG aspect, meaning that you know, at some points it's just not going to be as guaranteeably consistent as just generating Noble Phantasms. This has been the issue that we've seen over the years whenever we do try to come up with a carding comp to farm. It definitely can work, but you know, short of something like Seal where you can just lock the cards in, you can guaranteeably get it. Card farming has always been RNG, and it's one of the reasons why it is not the meta and why people don't do it. So it is what it is. I'm going to say at the end of the day, I actually think Larva Tiamat's going to be insanely strong at critting down things like challenge quests and single enemy boss fights. She will just be absurd at that because she'll be very capable of protecting the party. You're going to have to watch out for things that, you know, maybe could like pierce or invuln and stuff. But aside from that, Tiamat's going to be very, very difficult for an enemy to deal with. She's nigh undebuffable. She's unbuff strippable. So yeah, I think you're just going to be really, really solid. And the only thing that the enemy might be able to do is pierce you. So I do think that will be the best option nonetheless. But frankly speaking, with regards to her, I think she is not a gotta have. I think she is a very good unit to have. I think getting your hands on her, especially if you have maybe some of the other high octane quick options, I think she is a perfect complement to a lot of them, and she will work wonders in actual practice. But yeah, I'm going to say she's a little bit of an off-meta support in that regard. Not quite going to give her the meta designation, but still very, very strong. Doubly so if you roll more copies of her. So do you need to roll more copies of her? No, I don't believe you do. I think NP1 is fine to get her at a base value, but again, the more copies you get, the stronger this composition gets, and the more absurd it's going to get. So at the end of the day, I think Summer Tiamat is a very good unit. I think she plugs a lot of the holes. She gives that, you know, party charging support that you've actually been looking for in quick. Maybe not as ideal due to the fact that a lot of the buffing comes off of the NP. But I think this is the limitation that they decided on in order to stop quick from maybe being like a little bit too strong in comparison to its strong capacity to mighty chain and again capability to basically pop off with crits. So they knew they were going to make a really strong crit support here, and they didn't want to make it completely busted. So that's why they put a lot of it on the Noble Phantasm to help kind of hinder it in comparison to other just more casual and common compositions. So anyways, let me know what you guys think about Summer Tiamat. What are your concerns with her, and will you roll her, especially when she comes to an A? I'm also going to be curious to find out which Ascension you think is best. I'm actually really partial to the third Ascension. I think it's a beautiful one there. But again, I'll be curious to hear you guys' thoughts. And how do you guys feel about the Tiamat system overall? Is there anything I missed in the video? I'll be curious to read you guys' thoughts. I'll also go do the research on the fourth Append right now. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys for the next one. Later. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're almost to 18,000 subs. We'll celebrate with a barbecue mukbang when that happens.